Following the ending of the most recent episode of From Season 4, we saw the man in yellow appearing in front of Tabitha and putting two polar opposite outcomes in her way. He said that if the residents continued, then they could get closer to the answers that they're looking for when it comes to escaping, or it could send them in the complete opposite direction and an unimaginable suffering could be on the horizon. This paints either a positive light for the final 2 episodes of the season, or it's hinting at the darkest period in the town's timeline being just around the corner. So I thought I'd take a deeper look into what the man in yellow said, Sophia's behaviour in the trailer for episode 9, and share what I think is in store for the town, and why I ultimately think the man in yellow is actually now afraid. So let's get into it. Here is why the man in yellow is afraid. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. In episode 8 of season 4 of From, the time that we got with the man in yellow during the ending of the episode is the most time that we've ever spent with the villain. We only saw him for a brief moment in the season 3 finale, and we only saw him for a small moment again during the premiere of season 4. So by having this extra time, we learned so much more about him and what he was feeling in that specific moment. First off, he said several important things to Tabitha. He mentioned how they were about to do something that they've never done before, that they're doing so well, and that they've played this game so many times before. He also said how he wouldn't dream of killing Jade and Tabitha, not yet anyway, and he then went on to say that the notion of Boyd, Jade and the group digging up those bones could have allowed them to have found the key to setting the children free and bringing her own children home. However, at the same time, it could unleash a type of suffering that they could never begin to imagine. He also said that he'd missed her and that he'd see her again soon. Personally, all of this could ultimately mean one of two things. I'll start with what I believe is the option that I actually think is the case and the reason as to why he reached out to Tabitha himself. I think the man in yellow is afraid and he's given her 2 situations with 2 completely different outcomes because he desperately doesn't want them to go and find the bones that lie within the chamber in the caves where the monsters are. He spoke of a suffering that they wouldn't ever be able to imagine, but the thing that jumped out to me most when he said that was, why would he tell her that an unimaginable suffering could be on the horizon? Throughout the entirety of the 4 seasons of the show so far, we've seen the monsters relish, and even the man in yellow relish, on the town's suffering in a multitude of different ways. Whether it be the deaths that have occurred, the mind games that have been played, or even the thought processes that the residents have been stuck in. And all of this has always come out of the blue. So if extreme suffering was going to occur, I feel like he would have just let it all play out in the way that it usually does. The only reason he would have mentioned it to Tabitha is to get inside of her mind and try and make her almost overthink the entirety of the situation so that they might not go through with it. He wanted to make the residents scared because he was scared himself. I actually think he's almost shown his hand there, and Tabitha will then go to Boyd and Jade like we saw in the trailer, and she'll tell them what she saw, what he said to her, and it'll make Boyd think exactly what I'm thinking. That the man in yellow, the monsters and the town as an entity is scared, and they're actually getting closer to getting out of there. The man in yellow has never seen any of this happen in the timeline before, hence why he personally called Tabitha to meet with her. He knew that he needed to act in some kind of way in order to get a response from the town. The only thing is, it's probably not going to be the response that he wants. The other option that I could see occurring because of this is that the man in yellow isn't actually bluffing, and the suffering that he spoke of could actually be on the way for the residents. I say this because he might well know the way that the town behaves, that Boyd was on the edge of pushing forward and believing that the monsters in town were afraid because of the fight back that they were receiving. So he might have known that the small conversation that he had with Tabitha would push things into his favour because he'd get them inside of the caves. If this is the case, then the suffering that they can't begin to imagine could well be the massacre that tends to appear in every cycle. We know that it appeared when Victor was younger, and with Victor knowing that it could well be on the horizon too, because Ethan is getting to a similar age that he was at when it unfolded, and also because the boy in white previously said that they were running out of time. This could be the very thing that ends up happening. It would make sense for it to be the massacre because nobody would expect something as horrific as that, as it would genuinely be a suffering that was unimaginable. We did also see a moment where Sophia waved at Ethan, and it makes me think that the man in yellow is preparing for Ethan to ascend that Victor-type role in the town following the massacre that could be on the horizon. As I said earlier, the similarities between the 2 characters have been made. An alternative suffering that could happen is that we've seen Sophia gradually planting seeds inside of different characters. For example, we saw her getting Sarah on side and checking that she was malleable. Mariel too, with her showing her the visions. We've seen her getting Henry to believe that there's an outside world and that he needs to forcibly disconnect from the town. And now in the next episode, it seems like the man in yellow is going to be targeting Clara with the aim of infiltrating her mind. The outcome of the bottle tree being destroyed and the group trying to retrieve the bones could genuinely leave the fate of the town in several different directions. We know that the massacre happened, but we don't know what specifically triggered it. However, what we do know is that the massacre wasn't triggered by the bones or the bottle tree, because the man in yellow said that Tabitha hadn't gotten this far before. So this is why I think the man in yellow could be bluffing and actually be afraid. Another reason why I think the man in yellow could be afraid is because we've seen Sophia looking like she has actually been getting a bit more concerned over the past few episodes. She seemed genuinely intrigued with Boyd because she didn't know if the totem worked on killing the monsters when she asked Boyd if Kenny was successful with what he did. And with her actually returning to the true form, I feel like that seems like a bit of a desperate measure in order to instill ultimate fear. When looking ahead at the next trailer, we did see that Sophia approached Clara, and it seems like Clara is going to heavily feature in the next episode by being the next target for Sophia and the man in yellow. Her targeting somebody new could be the man in yellow's way of causing something to happen if Boyd and co decide to go down into the caves. I think the man in yellow exposed the fear that he had in his mind over the fact that the bones do actually have importance, and that if they are removed from the caves, then a way out could end up being found. I also think that the bones of those that were sacrificed could be the key to allowing the hold that the town has over the monsters and the immortality that they have to continue to be something that's active. Now, I have seen others saying online that the man in yellow seems just as much of a player in the game as what Jade and Tabitha are, because he said that they'd never got that far in the story before and that they were the closest things to friends that he's ever had, but I don't think that in the slightest. The man in yellow is a lonely man who's basically the person that rewrites the story of the town over and over again, and with Tabitha and Jade being incarnations of people that have existed throughout the town's history. The only reason he views them as the closest thing to friends is because they've been with him the entire time. I believe the man in yellow is scared because if the people do find a way of leaving the town, then he would well and truly be on his own and he'd have nobody else whatsoever. So it's the last thing he'd want, hence why he's even more afraid. A scared, frightened man in yellow that quite literally has nothing left to lose is one that I'm actually really excited to see in the show. Even if the bones and bottle tree gives the people a way out, an unimaginable suffering will most likely be on the way because the man in yellow won't want to lose the town or the people like Jade and Tabitha that he's come to view as the closest thing to his only friends. As we build towards the Season 4 finale, I'm excited to see just how dark the show is truly going to venture to show us the full capabilities of the man in yellow. So, there you have it, why the man in yellow is afraid. If you want to see more videos on From Season 4, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Do you think the man in yellow is afraid, or do you think he's just bluffing? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.